Have you ever stood inside an ancient building and heard something unnatural, a whisper where no one should be speaking, a groan from stone that hasn't moved in centuries, or a melody drifting through empty halls with no source? For generations, people exploring the world's oldest structures have reported eerie, unexplained sounds, voices without bodies, music without instruments, footsteps without feet. These aren't just ghost stories. They're documented acoustic phenomena recorded by scientists, historians, and travelers alike, all asking the same question: how can places built thousands of years ago still produce sounds that defy logic? Picture this: deep inside Egypt's Great Pyramid, a team of researchers once captured a low, resonant hum, a vibration thrumming through the walls like the echo of some forgotten machine. Or imagine walking through the labyrinthine passages of a medieval castle at midnight, only to hear a child's laughter ripple through the cold air, vanishing before you can trace it. These aren't isolated incidents. From the subterranean tunnels beneath Mayan temples to the hollow chambers of Roman aqueducts, ancient structures seem to hold onto sounds like secrets, replaying them for whoever listens closely enough. But here's what's even stranger: many of these sounds aren't random. They follow patterns, repeat at specific times, or even respond to human presence. Could it be accidental acoustics, the product of precise engineering we've yet to fully understand? Or is there something more mysterious at work? In this video, we're diving into 30 of the most chilling, mesmerizing, and scientifically baffling sounds ever reported in ancient sites across the globe. Some have been debunked, others remain utterly unexplained, and a few seem almost intentional, as if the builders left behind messages meant to be heard but not by the living. Ready to listen? Then let's step into the echo. The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood silent for millennia, or so we thought, but deep within its heart, in the so-called King's Chamber, visitors and researchers have reported something unsettling. A persistent, low-frequency hum, a vibration so deep it's felt more than heard. It thrums through the ancient limestone, a sound like distant machinery, though nothing mechanical exists within these walls. Some describe it as the pulse of the pyramid itself, a rhythmic echo that lingers long after any footsteps have faded. What makes this hum so baffling is its consistency. Unlike random creaks or gusts of wind, it's been detected repeatedly over decades, even by well-equipped scientific teams. One theory suggests resonant frequencies. The chamber's precise dimensions might amplify certain sound waves, turning ordinary vibrations from the earth or wind into something audible. Ancient builders were master acousticians. Temples from Malta to Mexico were designed to manipulate sound in ways we're still unraveling. Could the pyramid's architects have intentionally created a space that sings under the right conditions? Then there's the seismic explanation. The pyramid sits atop bedrock, and subtle shifts in the earth, movements too faint for us to notice, might send vibrations spiraling upward, transformed by the stone into that eerie drone. Others point to the desert wind, howling through hidden passageways or gaps in the outer casing stones, though no known openings align with the reports. But the most chilling detail: some visitors claim the hum changes when they speak, as if the chamber is listening and responding. Whether a quirk of physics or something far older, one thing's clear: the pyramid's silence was never really silence at all. At the base of Chichen Itza's towering El Castillo pyramid, a single clap of your hands doesn't just echo, it transforms. The sound bounces off the steep stone steps, warping into something uncanny, a high-pitched chirping ripple, almost like the call of a bird. But not just any bird. Researchers realize this artificial echo bears an eerie resemblance to the cry of the quetzal, a sacred creature in Mayan cosmology, often linked to deities and the spirit world. It's no accident. The pyramid steps were precisely engineered to create this effect, turning human sound into something supernatural. acoustic archaeologists studying the site have measured the phenomenon repeatedly, confirming the chirp isn't folklore, it's physics. The staircase acts like a diffraction grating, breaking the clap into staggered sound waves that collide at specific intervals. The result, a cascading chirp identical to the quetzal's mating call. For the Maya, this wasn't just clever design, it was divine communication. Imagine standing in the plaza during a ceremony, the priests clap summoning the voice of a god through the stones. What's even more fascinating is how this acoustic trick reveals the pyramid's hidden layers of meaning. The quetzal symbolized the boundary between earth and sky, its iridescent feathers traded like currency. By embedding its voice into the very architecture, the Maya may have been creating a portal, a place where human ritual could touch the realm of spirits. Modern engineers have tried replicating the effect with digital models, but even today, no one's matched the precision of these ancient builders. Whether it's the angle of the steps or the density of the limestone, El Castillo's secret remains as elusive as the quetzal itself. And then there's the chilling footnote. Some visitors claim the chirp sometimes answers back. On windless days when no one else is around, a second, fainter call seems to reply from the pyramid's summit. Scientists chalk it up to delayed echoes or auditory pareidolia, the mind's habit of finding patterns in noise. But for those who have heard it, the distinction hardly matters. In that moment, the stones don't just mimic a bird, they sing. Deep within Ireland's rolling green hills, the ancient passage tomb of Newgrange holds a secret that echoes through time, stones that groan like living things. Built over 5,000 years ago, this massive circular mound predates Stonehenge and even the Great Pyramids, and its walls are studded with rocks that don't just sit silently. When struck lightly, some of them emit long, mournful moans, a sound so human-like it's left archaeologists and visitors alike unnerved. What makes these stones sing? The answer lies in their composition. Many of Newgrange's slabs are rich in quartz, a mineral known for its piezoelectric properties, meaning it generates tiny electrical charges when stressed or vibrated. Neolithic builders likely chose these stones intentionally, not just for their durability but for their acoustic potential. Researchers experimenting with similar quartz-rich rocks have recreated the moaning effect, confirming it's not supernatural, but that doesn't make it any less intentional. This wasn't random noise. Sound rituals were central to many ancient cultures, and Newgrange's design suggests its creators understood acoustics on a level we're only beginning to grasp. The tomb's narrow passageway acts like a sound funnel, amplifying even faint vibrations. During the winter solstice, when sunlight pierces the inner chamber in a dramatic alignment, the groaning stones may have been part of a sensory spectacle, voices of the earth itself accompanying the rebirth of the sun. Imagine standing in that darkened space, the air thick with resonance, as priests or shamans struck the walls, summoning low, harmonic drones to accompany chants or ceremonies. But here's the mystery. Some stones only groan under specific conditions, like certain humidity levels or temperatures. Others refuse to sound at all unless struck at precise angles, hinting at a lost technique or forgotten knowledge. Even more intriguing, local folklore speaks of the singing stones as gateways to the otherworld, their moans said to be the voices of ancestors or spirits trapped within. Modern science can explain the how, but the why these particular stones, why this place remains wrapped in the same enigma as the tomb's spiral carvings, whispering across millennia without a translator. And then there are the accounts no one can quite explain. Visitors who swear the groans sometimes come unprompted, rising from the stones like sighs, especially at dawn or dusk. Could temperature shifts or subtle seismic activity trigger them? Possibly, but for those who have heard it, the line between geology and the uncanny blurs. Newgrange's builders left no written records, only these vocal rocks, a puzzle etched in quartz and time, waiting for the right hands or the right moment to make them speak again. Buried beneath the island of Malta, the The Hypogeum halsafliani isn't just an ancient temple, it's a subterranean instrument. Carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, this labyrinth of chambers holds a bizarre acoustic secret. Certain alcoves, when struck or sung into at the right pitch, don't just echo. They resonate with eerie, sustained harmonics, notes that hang in the air like ghostly voices, vibrating through the bones of anyone standing nearby. The effect is no accident. Archaeoacoustic studies reveal the Hypogeum's chambers were sculpted to amplify specific frequencies, particularly those within the range of the human voice. One room, known as the oracle chamber, is especially uncanny. A low chant or hum sung into its curved walls doesn't merely bounce back. It multiplies, filling the space with layered overtones that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some describe it as a chorus of whispers, an invisible audience humming along. What chills researchers most isn't just the precision of the engineering, but the purpose behind it. The Hypogeum was a burial site, its walls lined with the remains of thousands. Were these vocal resonances meant to guide the dead? Ancient Maltese art depicts figures with elongated, distorted heads, leading some to speculate that sound rituals' prolonged exposure to these vibrations might have altered consciousness, inducing trance states for priests or mourners. Modern experiments show that sustained exposure to certain low frequencies can trigger dizziness, visions, even feelings of disembodiment. Then there's the mystery of the missing frequency. Early 20th century reports mention a niche that resonated at 110 Hz, a pitch known to stimulate the brain's right hemisphere, linked to creativity and spiritual experiences. But after a mishandled restoration, that precise acoustic effect vanished, leaving scientists to wonder if the chamber's voice was deliberately tuned to that sacred threshold. Today, visitors still report odd sensations in the deeper passages, pressure in the chest, fleeting shadows at the edge of vision, or the unsettling sense that the walls are humming back at them long after their own voices have fallen silent. Perhaps the most haunting detail comes from local folklore. Elders speak of the Hypogeum's weeping stones, claiming certain tones make the rock emit sounds like sobbing, a phenomenon modern recordings have faintly captured. Whether ritual technology or something stranger, one thing's certain: 5 millennia later, this underground sanctuary hasn't finished singing its secrets. Beneath the sun-baked plains of Cappadocia, Turkey, lies a hidden world where the earth itself seems to breathe and sometimes to drum. Derinkuyu, the sprawling 18-story underground city carved into volcanic rock over 1,000 years ago, is a marvel of ancient engineering with its labyrinth of tunnels, chapels, and ventilation shafts. But it's also the source of something unsettling. Reports of rhythmic pounding, a sound like distant war drums echoing through its pitch-black passageways. The phenomenon occurs most often in the deepest chambers, where narrow ventilation shafts stretch upward like stone throats. When wind rushes through these tunnels at just the right speed, it doesn't whistle, it thumps. Researchers comparing the shafts to giant pipe organs have found that air currents can create standing waves, producing regular percussive beats. Some gusts even mimic the cadence of marching footsteps, a haunting effect that sent more than one explorer scrambling back to the surface. What's fascinating is how deliberate this design might have been. Derinkuyu wasn't just a refuge, it was a fully functional city, complete with stables, wineries, and even schools. The ventilation system was critical for survival, but acoustic studies suggest the shafts were tuned with uncanny precision. Certain chambers amplify the drumming effect, while others dampen it, implying the builders understood how to manipulate sound as expertly as they did space. Could these rhythms have served a purpose? Local legends speak of underground ceremonies where sound guided rituals, and the city's layout, with its central main street and radiating tunnels, hints at processional routes where acoustics might have played a role. But then there are the accounts that don't fit the wind theory. Visitors describe hearing the drumming on perfectly still days, or worse, when the rhythm seems to respond to their movements, speeding up as they descend certain corridors. Geologists point to thermal expansion, the way rock subtly shifts with temperature changes, but even that doesn't explain the reports of patterned beats, sometimes in sequences that resemble coded messages. The most intriguing clue comes from a 7th century account by a Byzantine soldier who wrote of standing guard in Derinkuyu during a siege and hearing the mountain talk, a steady, intelligent tapping that his unit took as a warning. Was it wind, stress-induced hallucination, or something the city's original architects built into the stone, a sonic alarm system lost to time? Today, the drumming remains as enigmatic as the city itself, a reminder that in Derinkuyu, even silence has layers. Hidden beneath the jungles of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, a network of caves holds an ancient secret: stalactites that don't just drip, they sing. In caverns like Balankanch and Acton Tunishil Muknal, slender limestone formations hang from the ceilings like frozen rain, but strike one gently with a mallet or even a knuckle, and it resonates with a clear, pure tone like a crystal bell. Some emit pitches so precise they match notes in the Western musical scale, while others produce deep, gong-like vibrations that seem to ripple through the cave walls. This phenomenon, often called the organ effect, isn't just geological luck. Archaeologists have found evidence that the Maya deliberately sought out these sonic caves for rituals. Scattered throughout the chambers are ceramic pots, charred remains of torches, and even small stone hammers, tools that suggest these spaces were used to create immersive soundscapes. When multiple stalactites are struck in sequence, they can produce simple melodies or dissonant harmonies, transforming the cave into a natural instrument. What's even more fascinating is how these sounds interact with the cave's unique acoustics. The uneven walls and water-slicked surfaces scatter sound waves unpredictably, creating echoes that overlap and linger. A single struck note might spiral into a chorus, bouncing off distant formations before fading into the darkness. For the Maya, who viewed caves as portals to the underworld, these resonances likely held spiritual significance. Imagine a shaman standing in the flickering torchlight, tapping stalactites in a ritual sequence, the notes morphing into otherworldly reverberations that felt less like music and more like voices from Xibalba, the realm of the dead. Modern researchers have mapped the tonal range of these caves, discovering that some chambers contain stalactites tuned to pentatonic scales, a 5-note pattern found in cultures worldwide. Was this intentional? The Maya had no written musical theory, but their artistic depictions of deities often show them holding or surrounded by instruments, suggesting sound was sacred. Even more compelling are reports from explorers who claim certain stalactites only resonate during specific times of year, aligning with solstices or equinoxes. Could temperature or humidity shifts alter their pitch, turning these caves into seasonal sound calendars? Then there's the eerie side effect of prolonged exposure. In the deepest chambers, where the air is thick with humidity, the combination of low-frequency tones and confined space can induce trance-like states. Anthropologists speculate that rituals here might have harnessed this disorientation, using sound to dissolve the boundary between worlds. Today, visitors who replicate these experiments describe a creeping sense of unease, as if the caves are remembering the ritual's echoes of echoes layered over centuries. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the arrangement of some stalactites. In Balankanch, a cluster near an altar produces a perfect minor third when struck, an interval often associated with mourning in musical traditions. Coincidence or a deliberate choice by priests who understood the emotional power of sound? The caves guard their secrets closely, but one thing's certain: when the hammers fell here long ago, it wasn't just stone that rang out. It was the earth itself singing back. On the windswept slopes of Easter Island, the moai statues stand silent until the storms come. Then, locals and visitors alike report something impossible. The stone giants begin to scream. These towering figures, carved centuries ago by the Rapa Nui people, are famed for their solemn faces gazing inland. But when gales tear across the island, particularly around Raraku, the volcanic quarry where most moai were born, the air fills with a sound like human wailing, sharp and mournful, as if the statues themselves are crying out. Scientists studying the phenomenon have pinpointed the source, not supernatural, but no less fascinating. Many moai contain eroded cavities, natural hollows worn by centuries of wind and rain. These aren't flaws, they're accidental instruments. As gusts funnel through the openings, the cavities act like giant stone whistles, producing vibrations that sharpen into eerie, high-pitched shrieks. The effect is strongest on statues partially buried or tilted at specific angles, their hidden acoustics unlocked only by storms fierce enough to play them. What's striking is how human the sounds seem. Unlike random wind howls, the moai's cries have a rhythmic, almost vocal quality, with rising and falling tones that mimic distress. Archaeologists suggest this might explain old Rapa Nui legends of statues walking or singing at night stories once dismissed as myth. Could the ancestors have witnessed these very sounds during storms, interpreting them as the statues coming to life? The timing adds weight to the theory. Most moai were toppled during civil strife by the 18th century, but oral histories insist some refused to fall, staying upright longer. Might those have been the ones least exposed to screaming winds, their bases still buried, their voices silent? Modern experiments confirm the effect. Researchers using artificial blasts of air have recreated the wailing, proving the statue's anatomy. Their nasal cavities, eye sockets, even tool marks left by carvers, can sculpt wind into something unnervingly lifelike. Yet one mystery lingers: the pitch. Some moai scream at frequencies known to trigger unease in humans, a biological response to sounds resembling infant cries or animal alarms. Was this coincidence, or did the Rapa Nui, master sculptors of emotion in stone, somehow intuit the acoustic power of their creations? Today, the screams are rare. Many moai have been re-erected for preservation, altering their wind exposure. But on stormy nights, when the right gusts tear through Raraku, the past still makes itself heard. Not in whispers, not in echoes, but in full-throated wails, a reminder that even in stillness, these stones were never truly mute. In the shadow of Lebanon's towering Baalbek ruins, where Roman temples sit atop blocks so massive modern engineers still puzzle over their placement, the earth occasionally answers back with a roar. The largest stones, some weighing over 1,000 tons, seem to defy gravity. But when tremors ripple through the Bikar Valley, they don't just shift. They thunder. Witnesses describe deep, resonant booms erupting from the megaliths during earthquakes, a sound like distant artillery or giants pounding the earth from below. This phenomenon isn't mere folklore. Geologists studying the site have found that the limestone blocks, precisely fitted without mortar, act like colossal soundboards during seismic activity. As tectonic stress grinds the stones against their foundations, the friction generates low-frequency vibrations, infrasound, often felt more than heard. But in Baalbek's case, the sheer scale of the megaliths amplifies these vibrations into audible waves, creating the illusion that the stones themselves are growling. What's fascinating is how these sounds may have shaped local legends. Ancient texts speak of Baalbek as the city of the sun, built by a race of giants. Could the thunderous echoes during quakes have reinforced these myths? Imagine standing near the temple of Jupiter during an aftershock, feeling the ground tremble as the monoliths emit unearthly groans. It's no wonder stories arose of subterranean titans, trapped beneath the stones and struggling to break free. Modern researchers have mapped the acoustics of the site, revealing that certain blocks resonate at frequencies known to induce unease or even visions in humans. This adds eerie context to accounts from medieval travelers who wrote of voices from the earth driving people mad during quakes. Today, seismic sensors confirm the stones do sing, but whether the ancients engineered them to do so or simply interpreted the phenomenon as divine remains one of Baalbek's most haunting riddles. Then there's the unsettling detail that defies easy explanation. Some booms occur without measurable quakes. Local shepherds report sporadic, isolated booms on still nights, as if something beneath the ruins is testing its chains. Geologists speculate about hidden cavities or groundwater shifts, but for those who have heard it, science offers little comfort. In Baalbek, even the stones remember, and sometimes they refuse to stay silent. In the quiet countryside of England, where rolling hills meet patches of ancient woodland, the rollright stones have stood for over 4,000 years, watching, waiting, and occasionally singing. This weathered stone circle, its origins lost to time, isn't just a monument to Neolithic ingenuity. On certain days, when the wind sweeps across the field at just the right angle, the stones don't merely stand silent. They hum. A low harmonic chorus rises from the circle, a collective vibration so uncanny it's earned the site its nickname, the Whispering Nights. Scientists studying the phenomenon have discovered the secret lies in the stone's unique composition and arrangement. Unlike uniform monoliths, these limestone slabs are pocked with natural fissures and hollows, eroded by millennia of rain and wind. When air rushes through these narrow channels, it splits into multiple streams, creating overlapping sound waves that collide and merge. The result, a resonant drone, almost like a human choir holding a single, sustained note. The effect is strongest at dawn and dusk, when temperature shifts cause subtle changes in air pressure, tuning the stones like nature's own pipe organ. But here's where it gets stranger. The sound isn't random. Folklorists have noted that the pitch of the rollright's choir eerily matches the traditional modal scales found in early British hymns, music that wouldn't exist for thousands of years after the stones were erected. Could this be coincidence, or is there something deeper at play? Some researchers suggest Neolithic builders might have selected these particular stones for their acoustic properties, embedding sound into ritual spaces long before written history. Others point to the circle's alignment with solstice sunrises, speculating that the wind's seasonal patterns could have turned the stones into a celestial alarm clock, their song heralding sacred dates. Local legends add another layer of mystery. Tales speak of the stones coming alive at midnight, their murmurs recounting forgotten battles or whispering the names of those destined to die. Modern visitors often report an unsettling sensation, not just hearing the sound but feeling it, as if the vibrations seep into their bones. One acoustics team even recorded a bizarre anomaly. When multiple people stand inside the circle during the humming, their own voices sometimes seem to harmonize involuntarily, as if the stones are pulling them into an invisible performance. Perhaps the most haunting detail is this: the rollright stones aren't alone. Similar sonic effects have been documented at other Neolithic sites across Europe, from Cornwall to the Orkneys. Were these circles designed as communal instruments, places where wind and stone could summon voices from the air itself? Or is the choir simply a quirk of geology, a beautiful accident we've woven into myth? Either way, one thing's certain: when the wind rises and the stones begin their ancient song, it's hard not to feel like you're listening to something that remembers. Deep beneath the ruins of Hattusa, the ancient capital of the Hittite Empire, lies a tunnel that doesn't just echo, it rings. Carved into the bedrock over 3,000 years ago, this narrow passageway connects the city's inner sanctum to hidden chambers beyond its walls. But walk through it today and something extraordinary happens. Every footstep, every brush of fabric against stone reverberates as a clear metallic chime, as if the tunnel is lined with invisible bells. Archaeologists studying the site have confirmed the effect isn't an illusion. The entire corridor acts like a giant sound chamber, transforming mundane movements into an orchestra of otherworldly tones. The secret lies in the tunnel's construction. Unlike ordinary stone passageways, the walls here are embedded with veins of bronze-rich ore, a deliberate choice by Hittite engineers. When vibrations from footsteps travel through the rock, they excite these metallic deposits, causing them to oscillate at high frequencies. The result: a shimmering, bell-like resonance that lingers in the air long after the sound should have faded. Modern acoustic scans reveal the tunnel's curvature acts as a natural amplifier, focusing these tones into a piercing clarity that feels almost artificial. But why would the Hittites go to such lengths? The answer might lie in their reverence for sound as a divine medium. Hittite texts describe rituals where priests used metal drums and gongs to communicate with the storm god Teshub, their most powerful deity. The tunnel's location, leading directly to a sacred spring, suggests it was part of a ceremonial route where every step literally rang with spiritual significance. Imagine a procession of priests moving through this space, their footfalls triggering cascades of harmonic tones, transforming a simple walk into a symphony meant for the gods' ears. What's even more astonishing is the precision behind the phenomenon. Certain sections of the tunnel produce distinct pitches depending on where you step, almost like a rudimentary musical scale. Researchers experimenting with calibrated hammers have mapped out sequences that could recreate simple melodies, raising the tantalizing possibility that the Hittites composed sound paths for specific rituals. Yet for all the scientific explanations, the tunnel holds one unnerving mystery. Some visitors report hearing the bell tones even when standing perfectly still, as if the stones are replaying ancient footsteps. Geologists suggest seismic activity or distant vibrations might trigger residual resonance, but locals whisper of something else entirely. They call it the echo that remembers, a sound not bound by time, waiting in the dark to answer back. Whether physics or something older, one thing's clear: in Hattusa's depths, the past doesn't just whisper. It sings, deep within the rose-red cliffs of Petra, where ancient Nabatean tombs are carved into sheer rock faces. Visitors sometimes freeze in place, not at the sight of the ruins, but at the sound. A soft, rhythmic dripping echoes through the narrow sick, the canyon entrance to the city, but there's no water in sight. Instead, the walls themselves seem to weep, emitting faint, mournful sobs that reverberate off the sandstone like whispers from the stone. Geologists studying the phenomenon have traced these sounds to Petra's unique geology. The rock here isn't solid, it's a labyrinth of microscopic fissures, remnants of ancient seabeds compressed over millennia. When rare rains fall in the Jordanian desert, water seeps into these hidden veins, trickling downward at an agonizingly slow pace, sometimes taking years to travel just a few feet. As droplets finally break free inside air-filled cavities, they strike the walls with a liquid ping, their echoes amplified by the canyon's natural acoustics. The result, a chorus of phantom tears, each note shaped by the hollows and curves of the rock. But the eerie part isn't just the sound, it's the timing. Locals claim the weeping intensifies at dawn and dusk, when temperature shifts cause the sandstone to contract and expand, squeezing trapped moisture like a sponge. During the winter solstice, when sunlight angles perfectly down the sick, the walls allegedly cry more frequently, as if the rock remembers some long-lost ritual tied to light and shadow. Modern hydrophones placed inside the cliffs have captured the droplets' rhythms, revealing patterns that mirror human breathing: slow inhales, then sudden exhales of sound. Archaeologists point to Nabatean water engineering as a possible clue. Petra's builders were masters of hydraulics, carving channels and cisterns so precise they could funnel rainfall into reservoirs miles away. Did they also notice the weeping walls, interpreting them as messages from their water-loving deities? Some reliefs near the sick depict figures with upturned palms catching droplets, while others show weeping eyes, symbols that might hint at a sacred connection between sound and sustenance. Yet for all the scientific explanations, some accounts defy logic. Guides speak of dry seasons when the weeping starts unprompted, or moments when the sobs seem to form words in lost dialects. One acoustics team even recorded a bizarre anomaly. After playing a traditional Nabatean flute melody near the walls, the dripping sounds briefly synchronized with the tune, as if the stone was humming along. Coincidence, perhaps, but in a city where tombs outnumber homes and the rocks breathe with the voices of unseen water, even coincidence feels like a language waiting to be deciphered. In the heart of Beijing, where emperors once prayed for heavenly favor, the Temple of Heaven holds an acoustic marvel that defies logic, a wall that carries secrets on the wind. Built in the 15th century, the circular echo wall stretches 65 meters in diameter, its smooth blue-tiled surface curving like a frozen wave. But stand at one end and whisper a phrase no matter how softly, and someone at the opposite side will hear it with startling clarity, as if your voice has leaped across the open courtyard without fading. This isn't just clever architecture, it's precision engineering turned into acoustic magic. The wall's perfect circular shape and flawlessly polished surface create a phenomenon called whispering gallery waves, where sound skims along the curve without losing energy. Unlike ordinary echoes that scatter and decay, these whispers travel uninterrupted, hugging the wall like a ribbon of air. Scientists have measured the effect, confirming that even frequencies too faint for normal hearing, like the rustle of a sleeve or the tap of a fingernail, can traverse the entire distance. What makes the echo wall truly extraordinary is how it plays with perception. Because the sound doesn't bounce randomly but follows the wall's contour, listeners often swear the voice comes from right beside them, not dozens of meters away. Imagine standing there as an emperor's courtier, hearing confidential orders materialize out of thin air. No wonder many believed the wall was enchanted. Modern visitors still react with disbelief, testing the effect with giggles, gasps, even marriage proposals, their words weaving around the circle like invisible thread. But the wall has a darker secret too. Certain spots along its length don't just transmit sound, they amplify it unnervingly. Step into one of these hot zones, and a whisper can boom like a shout, while other sections seem to swallow noise whole. Researchers suspect subtle imperfections in the tiles where patterns from centuries of touch create these pockets of distortion, turning the wall into a patchwork of acoustic tricks. The most haunting detail: on foggy mornings when moisture thickens the air, the wall doesn't just carry voices, it stretches them. Words elongate into spectral drones, syllables blending like chants from another time. It's no accident the site was used for solstice ceremonies, where sound, sky, and architecture aligned. Today, as tourists press their cheeks to the cool tiles, they're not just witnessing an antique curiosity. They're hearing the past the way the emperors did, not as history, but as a whisper in the ear, urgent and intimate across 600 years. High above the jungle canopy, where the ruins of Decode scrape the sky, the stones don't just stand, they sing. At dawn, when the wind sweeps across the ancient Mayan city, something extraordinary happens. The towering pyramids, their steep staircases ribbed with weathered masonry, transform into colossal flutes. Air currents funnel through narrow gaps between the steps, splitting into precise streams that collide and swirl. And out of the silence rises a chorus of whistling tones, eerie and melodic, as if the ruins themselves are greeting the sun. This isn't random noise. Archaeologists studying the site have mapped the phenomenon, uncovering a startling truth: the pyramid's acoustics are no accident. Decode's builders positioned and shaped these structures to harness the wind, sculpting stone into instruments that activate at specific times of day. The effect is strongest during the first hour after sunrise, when temperature shifts create predictable air currents. The sound isn't a single note but a cascade, rising and falling in pitch as the wind gusts, sometimes mimicking the pentatonic scales found in traditional Mayan music. What chills researchers most is the intentionality behind it. The pyramids most famous for this effect, Temple 1 and Temple 2, frame the great plaza like sentinels, their staircases aligned to catch the morning wind like sails. Carvings at the base of these structures depict figures holding flutes, their mouths open as if mid-song, Could these have been sonic blueprints, instructions left by the architects? Modern acoustic engineers attempting to replicate the effect have struggled to match its precision. Even slight deviations in staircase angle or stone porosity silence the flutes, suggesting the Maya understood aerodynamics and resonance on a level we're only beginning to grasp. Then there's the ritual significance. For the Maya, dawn wasn't just a time of day. It was a cosmic rebirth, the moment when the sun god triumphed over the underworld. The whistling pyramids may have served as a celestial alarm clock, their music signaling the start of ceremonies. Imagine priests gathering in the plaza below as the first light touched the temples, the air alive with unearthly harmonies. The sound wouldn't just announce the dawn, it would embody it, turning wind into a divine voice. Yet the mystery deepens after sunrise. Visitors who climb the pyramids at midday sometimes report faint whistles even in calm air, especially near certain carved vents. Some anthropologists speculate these could be harmonic echoes, sound waves trapped in hidden chambers, slowly leaking back into the world. Others point to the pyramid's internal passages, which may act like Helmholtz resonators, amplifying vibrations from distant storms or even footsteps. The most haunting detail comes from local guides who swear the whistles occasionally answer each other. A call from Temple 1 met by a response from Temple 2, though no wind could explain the delay. Scientists attribute it to microclimates or auditory illusion, but for those standing in the plaza at daybreak, the distinction hardly matters. When the stones sing, time collapses. The past isn't buried, it's breathing, vibrating, alive in every note. Buried beneath the Orkney Islands in Scotland, the 5,000-year-old tomb of Misho holds a sound unlike any other, a whisper that becomes a roar. This Neolithic chambered cairn, built with slabs of stone so precisely fitted you couldn't slide a knife between them, isn't just a resting place for the dead. It's a resonant vault, a space where human voices don't merely echo, they swell into thunder, vibrating the very air with unnatural force. The phenomenon is most intense during the winter solstice, when the setting sun aligns perfectly with Misho's entrance passage. For 17 minutes, sunlight pierces the tunnel like an arrow, flooding the central chamber with golden light, and in that fleeting window, the acoustics transform. Speak even softly, and your words amplify tenfold, rolling across the stone walls with a booming, almost metallic timbre. Archaeoacoustic studies reveal the tomb's geometry is responsible. The corbelled ceiling, rising to a near-perfect parabolic arch, focuses sound waves into a unified column, while the chamber's dimensions create standing waves that sustain notes far longer than they should. The effect is so pronounced that modern researchers have compared it to standing inside a giant bronze bell. What chills historians is the intentionality behind this design. Misho's builders left no written records, but the tomb's alignment with the solstice and the dramatic acoustic shift that accompanies it suggests sound was central to its purpose. Imagine a ritual unfolding here millennia ago. As sunlight crept through the passage, a chant or prayer would have swelled into something overwhelming, the very stones magnifying human voices into something divine. The resonance isn't just loud, it's layered, creating harmonics that seem to come from all directions at once. Some visitors describe the sensation as being inside the voice itself, as if the tomb is speaking through them. Yet the mystery deepens when the solstice light fades. Outside those 17 minutes, the chamber still echoes but differently. Whispers uttered near the back wall bend unnervingly, seeming to originate from the ceiling or even the floor. Sound engineers have traced this to Misho's unique masonry. The stones aren't just stacked, they're subtly angled, creating acoustic lenses that warp and redirect noise. One theory suggests these distortions weren't flaws but features, designed to mimic the disorienting effects of the underworld in Neolithic cosmology. The most haunting accounts come from those who have experienced the tomb alone. Some report hearing their own voices answered by a deeper, slower echo, a shadow voice lagging just behind, as if something in the stones is learning to speak. Others describe a low-frequency hum, imperceptible at first but growing louder the longer they stay, like the Earth itself tuning to an invisible frequency. Scientifically, this could be wind interacting with the cairn's hidden fissures, but folklore offers a darker explanation. Viking graffiti carved into the walls 12 centuries ago, runes boasting of treasure and warnings of ghosts hint that even then, Misho was a place where sound blurred the line between the living and the dead. Today, as solstice visitors crowd the chamber, waiting for those sacred minutes when light and sound collide, the question lingers: was this tomb built to amplify voices, or to channel something else? When the walls roar back, it's hard not to wonder if the stones remember the prayers once whispered here, and if 5,000 years later they're still waiting for someone to listen. Rising from the dusty plains of northern Ethiopia, the ancient obelisks of Axum stand like silent sentinels, except when they don't. For centuries, locals whispered that these towering stone spires, some weighing hundreds of tons, could sing. Not with the wind or through some hollow chamber, but when touched by human hands. Press an ear against their weathered surfaces during the dry season, and you might hear it, a faint metallic buzzing, as if the stones were humming with electricity. The secret lies in their construction. Unlike ordinary granite monuments, Axum's stelae are laced with thin veins of iron-rich minerals, embedded deliberately during their carving over 1,700 years ago. Modern scans reveal these metallic threads winding through the stone-like circuitry, concentrating around key points where the buzzing is most intense. When the desert heat bakes the obelisks under the midday sun, the metal expands at a different rate than the surrounding rock, creating microfractures. Touch the surface, and the slightest vibration sends these fissures resonating, an effect akin to running a damp finger around the rim of a crystal glass, but on a monumental scale. Archaeologists suspect this wasn't accidental. The stelae were erected as markers for royal tombs, and Axumite texts describe rituals where priests would awaken the stones by striking them with ceremonial rods. Contemporary accounts from 6th century traders mention hearing a chorus of iron bees emanating from the obelisks during ceremonies, a sound said to summon ancestral spirits. Intriguingly, the buzzing intensifies near the bases of certain stelae, precisely where offerings of metal artifacts have been excavated, suggesting the Axumites may have tuned these sonic properties by embedding additional alloys. Today, the phenomenon is fainter. Centuries of erosion have dulled the metallic veins, and many obelisks were toppled or damaged during wars. But in 2008, a team from Addis Ababa University managed to recreate the sound using sensitive accelerometers. Their recordings captured not just random noise, but harmonic frequencies matching traditional scales used in Ethiopian liturgical music. One obelisk, the 24-meter-tall King Azana's stele, even produced a perfect G-sharp when struck at its base, a note that, when sustained, seemed to trigger sympathetic vibrations in nearby stelae, as if the stones were communicating. The most haunting detail: the buzzing isn't constant. It peaks during the same weeks when ancient Axumite calendars marked ceremonies for the dead, a synchronicity that defies easy explanation. Some scholars argue the obelisks act like giant tuning forks, resonating with subtle seismic shifts during seasonal changes. Others point to folklore claiming the stones only sing for those with royal blood, a notion tested in 2012 when descendants of the Axumite dynasty visited and reported hearing tones no researchers could detect. Whether trick of acoustics or something more, the obelisks guard their song closely. Even now, after 17 centuries, they choose when to hum and who gets to listen. On the storm-lashed coast of Brittany, where France's Carnac stones stretch for miles like a petrified army, something unnatural crackles through the air. These ancient megaliths, standing in Erie, rose for over 6,000 years, aren't just silent witnesses to history during thunderstorms. They become something else entirely. Locals have long spoken of the stones singing with lightning, emitting sharp electrical snaps and pops as if charged by the sky itself. but it's not thunder they're hearing. It's the sound of the stones themselves discharging energy, a phenomenon so startling it's been captured on audio recordings during violent weather. Scientists venturing into the fields during storms have documented the bizarre effect. As lightning flickers overhead, certain stones emit staccato bursts of sound, akin to static discharge or the sizzle of a live wire. The culprit, a combination of mineral composition and millennia of exposure. Many of Carnac's megaliths are rich in quartz, a mineral known to generate piezoelectric charges when stressed, and these stones have endured centuries of wind, rain, and seismic shifts. During storms, electromagnetic activity in the atmosphere interacts with these latent charges, creating miniature discharges along the stone's surfaces. The result isn't just visible sparks, it's audible crackling, a sound like breaking glass or frying bacon, radiating from rocks that should be inert. What's chilling is how localized the phenomenon is. Only certain rows of stones, particularly those aligned along geological faults, exhibit this behavior. Archaeologists studying the site note that these singing megaliths often mark burial sites or ritual spaces, raising the possibility that their electrical properties were known to the builders. Ancient Celtic myths from the region speak of stones that speak when the gods are angry, while medieval chronicles describe priests avoiding the fields during storms, fearing the stones were harps of the devil. Modern experiments have deepened the mystery. When researchers applied pressure to samples of Carnac's quartz-rich stones in lab settings, they recorded similar crackling sounds, proof that the effect isn't purely weather-dependent. But here's the unsettling twist. Some stones continue emitting faint discharges for hours after a storm passes, as if holding onto the energy like a battery. One theory suggests the entire alignments could function as a primitive capacitor network, storing and releasing energy along fault lines. Then there are the eyewitness accounts that defy explanation. Farmers describe seeing blue-white coronas dancing along the stone's edges during particularly violent storms, accompanied by a smell of ozone and a low, droning hum. In 2011, a team from the University of Rennes even captured thermal footage showing sudden temperature spikes along specific megaliths seconds before discharges, as if the stones were anticipating the lightning. Whether ancient energy harvesting or eerie coincidence, one thing's clear: the Carnac alignments weren't just placed, they were charged, and when the storms roll in, these stones don't just stand silent. They speak in a language of sparks and static, a dialogue between earth and sky that's been crackling for 6,000 years. Beneath the sun-bleached ruins of Knossos, where frescoes of leaping dolphins and bull dancers still cling to crumbling walls, the air itself seems alive. Walk through the palace's labyrinthine corridors during the island's dry summer months, and you'll hear it, a sound like slow, measured breathing, a sigh rising from the stones as if the earth itself is exhaling. This isn't imagination or myth. Crete's ancient Minoan palace, built over 3,000 years ago, was designed with a ventilation system so advanced it still functions today, turning the entire structure into a colossal set of lungs. The secret lies in the palace's unique architecture. Unlike later Bronze Age buildings, Knossos features dozens of carefully positioned shafts and ducts woven through its walls like a circulatory system. These aren't mere holes, they're precisely angled channels that harness the Aegean's seasonal winds, funneling air through the complex with startling efficiency. When the Meltemi, a dry northern wind, blows across Crete in July and August, it streams through these passages, creating vortices that produce soft, rhythmic whooshes. The effect is most pronounced in the palace's throne room, where a hidden ventilation shaft behind the alabaster seat causes incoming air to oscillate, generating a sound uncannily like human respiration. Archaeologists measuring the phenomenon have clocked the breaths at intervals matching resting human rates 12 to 20 cycles per minute, a quirk that sparked theories about intentional acoustic mimicry. What chills researchers isn't just the engineering but the cultural context. the Minoans worshipped a goddess often depicted with serpents coiling around her arms, a deity linked to earth, cycles, and possibly even breath itself. Wall paintings in the palace show figures holding peculiar funnel-shaped objects, which some scholars interpret as ritual sound amplifiers. Could the sighing corridors have been part of ceremonies, their artificial respiration symbolizing the palace as a living entity? Modern experiments support the idea. When replica Minoan conch shell trumpets are blown near the ventilation shafts, the sound warps into something eerily organic, like a giant inhaling. Then there's the unsettling temporal pattern. The sighs grow loudest during the 2 weeks when the Meltemi blows strongest, a period that aligns with ancient harvest festivals dedicated to the Lady of the Labyrinth. Local folklore claims the sounds are the palace remembering its last days before the volcanic eruption that crippled Minoan civilization, replaying the final breaths of a dying world. Geologists offer a simpler explanation: shifting air pressure as the wind interacts with the ruins' new cracks and collapses. But stand in those corridors at dusk when the light slants just so, and science feels thin against the weight of that slow, mournful exhalation. The stones aren't just sighing, they're speaking in a language of wind and memory, whispering secrets we've only begun to hear. Carved into the basalt cliffs of Maharashtra, India, the caves of Ellora hold a secret written not in stone but in sound. Step into Cave 16, the monumental Kailasa temple, during the quiet hours before dusk, and you might hear them. Faint, rhythmic murmurs weaving through the pillared halls as if a chorus of monks were chanting just beyond sight. The acoustics here played tricks with time. A whisper at one end of the 60-foot-high central chamber can travel crisp and clear to the far corner, while certain niches amplify footsteps into resonant gongs. But the most haunting effect is the illusion of distant voices, a phenomenon so precise it feels orchestrated by unseen hands. The key lies in the cave's geometry. Unlike natural caverns, Ellora's 34 rock-cut temples were carved from the top down over 5 centuries, giving architects godlike control over every surface. The walls aren't flat, they're subtly faceted, their angles calculated to reflect sound waves in deliberate patterns. Researchers using laser scans discovered that specific corridors funnel air currents into standing waves, creating interference patterns that mimic human vocal harmonics. When wind enters through strategic ventilation shafts originally designed to prevent candle smoke from accumulating, it interacts with these surfaces, producing tones that overlap and decay in ways eerily reminiscent of Sanskrit mantras. What chills historians is how this aligns with ancient texts. A 9th-century manuscript describes rituals where priests would invoke the mountain's voice by positioning themselves at nodal points in the caves. Modern acousticians testing these spots found that a single singer standing at the exact center of Kailasa's main hall can generate a cascading echo effect, each repetition slightly altered by the unique contours of the ceiling, creating the impression of a responding choir. Even the carvings seem designed to enhance the phenomenon. Rows of dancing Shiva figures along the walls feature open mouths and flared nostrils, sculpted to scatter sound waves into diffuse, voice-like vibrations. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider the cave's construction timeline. The chanting effect is strongest in structures built during the Rashtrakuta dynasty between the 8th and 10th centuries, a period when Tantric Buddhism flourished in the region. These traditions emphasized sacred sound as a path to enlightenment, using repetitive chants to alter consciousness. Intriguingly, the caves most renowned for phantom vocals, like Cave 10, the Vishvakarma cave, contain niches where clay pots were embedded in the walls before carving. Archaeologists initially assumed these were for structural stability, until acoustic testing revealed they act like Helmholtz resonators, tuning specific frequencies to linger longer than others. The most unsettling accounts come from nighttime explorations. Guards patrolling after closing time report hearing the chanting intensify around 3 a.m., particularly during the monsoon season when humidity sharpens the cave's acoustics. Scientists attribute this to wind patterns shifting with temperature changes, but local legends tell a different story. They speak of the caves as living entities, their stones imbued with the prayers of thousands who worshipped here. Whether physics or something older, one thing's certain: at Ellora, the walls don't just echo, they remember. Nestled deep in Pennsylvania's wooded hills lies a field of boulders that don't just sit silently, they sing. Known as the Ringing Rocks, this 7-acre stretch of volcanic diabase stones clinks and chimes like a giant xylophone when struck with a hammer. But what makes these rocks truly extraordinary isn't just their metallic resonance, it's the mystery of why they ring at all, and why this peculiar patch exists nowhere else in the region. Geologists have studied these igneous rocks for decades, uncovering their unique composition. Unlike ordinary fieldstones, the ringing rocks contain high concentrations of aluminum and iron, which create internal stresses within their crystalline structure. When struck, these tensions release vibrations at frequencies between 300 and 800 Hz, solidly within the range of human speech. The effect is uncanny. A simple tap produces clear, bell-like tones that linger in the air, some lasting up to 5 seconds. What's even stranger, only about 30% of the boulders in the field actually ring. The rest, identical in appearance, respond with dull thuds, as if the musical stones are scattered among silent sentinels. Native American oral traditions hint at deeper significance. Lenape legends speak of this place as the rocks that remember, claiming the stones captured voices from ancient ceremonies. Archaeological evidence supports ritual use. Centuries-old hammerstones have been found nearby, their worn surfaces suggesting generations of deliberate striking. Some researchers believe the site may have served as a kind of acoustic calendar, with specific rocks producing tones that changed with seasonal temperature shifts. Modern experiments show the stones do resonate differently in winter versus summer, their pitches subtly shifting as the metal veins inside expand or contract. The most baffling feature defies conventional geology. In most rocky fields, erosion and plant roots slowly separate stones over time. But here, the boulders form a tight, interlocking pavement 3 to 10 feet deep, with virtually no soil or vegetation between them, almost as if placed deliberately. Core samples reveal this pavement extends downward for over 12 feet, far deeper than natural frost heave could explain. Local lore claims the arrangement isn't natural at all, but the work of a long-lost culture that somehow tuned the stones like instruments. Today, visitors still test the rocks with hammers, filling the forest with an eerie, atonal symphony. Scientists continue debating whether the site's peculiarities stem from a rare geological fluke or intentional ancient engineering. But stand there at dusk when the last strikes fade into twilight, and you'll feel the deeper truth: this isn't just a field of rocks. It's a frozen song waiting centuries for the right hands to play it again. In the heart of India's Deccan Plateau, where the ruins of Bijapur whisper forgotten histories, one structure defies the very laws of acoustics: Gol Gumbaz. This colossal 17th-century mausoleum, crowned by a dome wider than the Pantheon's, hides an auditory marvel in its soaring heights. Step inside, and the air itself conspires to carry secrets. A murmur uttered against the wall at one end of the vast chamber. A space large enough to hold a modern-day concert hall travels 37 meters with eerie precision, arriving at the opposite side as crisp as if the speaker stood right beside you. This isn't mere echo, it's sound bending to the will of stone. The dome's engineering is the key. Unlike ordinary curved ceilings that scatter noise, Gol Gumbaz's interior forms a perfect whispering gallery, a phenomenon usually found in small, intimate spaces, not monuments of this scale. The secret lies in the geometry. The dome's curvature is calculated so precisely that sound waves glide along its surface without losing energy, like a marble rolling around the rim of a bowl. Architects of the Adil Shahi dynasty embedded this acoustic trick into the design, lining the interior with a smooth, polished plaster that minimizes sound absorption. The result, whispers don't just travel, they cling to the walls, skimming the circumference of the dome until they reach a listener's ear with almost supernatural clarity. What's even more astonishing is how the space plays with perception. Stand at the center of the chamber and clap your hands just once, and the sound ricochets back not as a single echo, but as a rapid-fire series of 7 distinct repetitions, a phenomenon called the sevenfold echo. This occurs because the sound bounces between the dome's apex and the floor in a perfectly timed loop, each reflection arriving milliseconds apart. Scientists measuring these acoustics have found the timing matches the mathematical harmonics of the space, confirming the builder's grasp of wave physics centuries before the field existed as formal science. But Gol Gumbaz's sonic secrets go beyond mere physics. Local legends claim the mausoleum's designers were inspired by Sufi mystics who believed sound could bridge the earthly and divine. The whispering effect wasn't just architectural bravado, it was spiritual technology. Imagine a funeral procession circling the tomb, mourners' prayers sliding uninterrupted around the dome, their words preserved in the air like flies trapped in amber. Even today, visitors testing the phenomenon report an uncanny sensation, the distinct feeling that the whispers they hear aren't just carried, but somehow amplified, as if the dome is cupping its hands around each syllable and delivering it personally. Modern engineers have tried to replicate Gol Gumbaz's acoustics in virtual models, tweaking angles and materials, but none have matched its perfection. The dome's brilliance lies in its floor's microscopic irregularities in the plaster, the way humidity subtly alters the air density inside the chamber, even the wear patterns left by centuries of hands touching the walls. These aren't accidents, they're proof that the builders understood sound as a living thing, something to be shaped not just by mathematics, but by the textures of the world itself. And then there's the mystery that defies all explanations. On still, windless nights, guards patrolling the grounds swear the dome sometimes whispers back not echoes, but words in no known language rising from the stones like steam. Scientists dismiss it as auditory pareidolia, the mind shaping noise into speech, but stand there alone in that vast shadowed space and you'll understand why Gol Gumbaz isn't just a tomb. It's a conversation, one that's been going on for 400 years with no intention of stopping. Rising above the dusty plains of central Mexico, the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan doesn't just dominate the landscape, it sings with the voice of a phantom hound. When the dry season winds whip across the ancient city, something uncanny happens. The temple's steep staircases and ornate stone serpents transform into a colossal wind instrument, emitting long, mournful howls that echo across the ruins. Locals have whispered about this phenomenon for generations, calling it the Song of the Dog God, a sound so visceral, it's said to carry the weight of forgotten prophecies. The secret lies in the pyramid's intricate facade. Unlike smoother structures, its tiers are studded with hundreds of carved stone heads depictions of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity, each with gaping mouths and flared nostrils. When wind speeds exceed 20 miles per hour, these openings act like a series of microscopic flutes, channeling air into turbulent vortices. The result isn't random noise. It's a chorus of harmonized wails, eerily reminiscent of a pack of coyotes calling in the night. Acoustic engineers studying the site discovered the heads were carved at precise angles and depths, turning what could have been chaotic whistles into controlled, animalistic tones. But what chills researchers most is how intentional this design appears. The howling peaks during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the same dates when sunlight slithers down the pyramid's balustrades like a descending serpent. For the Teotihuacanos, who aligned their entire city to celestial events, this wasn't just atmospheric coincidence, it was sacred theater. Imagine standing in the ceremonial plaza as the wind rose, the temple's stone jaws unleashing unearthly cries just as the shadow play reached its climax. The effect wouldn't just awe spectators, it would blur the line between architecture and living deity. Modern experiments reveal even darker layers. When researchers replicated the wind flow in a scale model, they found certain openings produced infrasound frequencies below human hearing known to trigger unease or even hallucinations. Could the pyramid's architects have understood this primal power? Spanish chronicles from the 16th century describe Aztec descendants who revered Teotihuacan performing rituals where participants claimed to hear the gods bark, entering trances that lasted for days. Yet the true mystery isn't just the howl, it's the silence that follows. Visitors who climb the pyramid steps often report the wind dying abruptly as they reach the summit, as if the structure itself is holding its breath. Archaeoacoustic surveys show the upper platforms were designed with sound-dampening ledges, creating pockets of eerie stillness amid the gale. Perhaps this was intentional contrast, the cacophony below heightening the sacred quiet above. A sensory journey mirroring the Teotihuacanos' belief in ascending through cosmic realms. Today, as tourists tilt their heads to catch the temple's ghostly song, one question lingers: were these stones shaped to mimic the divine or to become it? When the wind howls through those serpent mouths, it's hard not to feel like you're hearing something ancient, alive, and far from finished with its message. Beneath the shifting sands of Egypt's Fayum oasis lies a mystery that hums with forgotten music, the so-called lost labyrinth of Hawara. Ancient historians like Herodotus and Strabo wrote of this vast underground complex, a maze of 3,000 rooms said to rival the pyramids in grandeur. But today, all that remains visible is a weathered foundation. Yet those who venture into its buried passageways sometimes emerge with stories that defy explanation. When certain corridors are traversed at specific speeds, the air itself seems to come alive with musical tones, clear, resonant notes rising from the stones like a phantom orchestra tuning its instruments. Archaeologists studying the sparse ruins have uncovered clues to this sonic enigma. The labyrinth's walls, though crumbling, reveal traces of an ingenious design. Narrow shafts filled with graded sand, precisely spaced niches in the ceilings, and corridors with mathematically calculated curves. When wind or even human movement disturbs these hidden features, the architecture transforms into a giant Aeolian harp. Air currents funneled through the shafts vibrate against the sand-filled cavities, creating standing waves that produce distinct pitches. The effect is eerily intentional. Certain paths seem tuned to pentatonic scales used in ancient Egyptian rituals, while others generate dissonant clusters that mirror the chaotic intervals described in underworld texts. What's truly baffling is how these sounds interact with the labyrinth's layout. During a 2016 expedition, researchers using ground-penetrating radar discovered that the musical corridors form a spiral pattern leading to a central chamber. When mapped, this path mirrors the helical structure of a conch shell, a shape known to amplify and color sound naturally. Folk tales from nearby villages speak of the singing path, claiming those who follow the notes to the heart of the ruins can hear the voices of gods whispering through the walls. Modern acousticians have partially validated these legends. Recordings made in the central chamber reveal unusual reverberation effects, with certain frequencies lingering for up to 12 seconds, a phenomenon unheard of in conventional stone chambers. Then there's the temporal element. The tones only manifest reliably at dawn and dusk, when temperature differences between the desert surface and the cool underground create ideal air pressure gradients. This coincides exactly with ancient accounts of priests conducting sun gate rituals at twilight, suggesting the labyrinth's acoustics were harmonized with celestial events. Infrared scans have revealed something even stranger: patches of the walls that heat and cool at different rates, possibly engineered to warp sound waves in sync with the sun's movement. The most haunting reports come from those who have walked the labyrinth alone. Several explorers describe hearing the notes shift in response to their footsteps, as if the maze were playing them like an instrument. One team even captured audio of a 5-note sequence that matches a melody found on a pottery shard from Amenemhat III's reign, the pharaoh who supposedly commissioned the labyrinth. Whether by cosmic coincidence or deliberate design, Hawara stones seem to hold melodies older than memory itself, waiting for the right breath of wind, the right footfall, to wake them from their long silence. Could this be the world's oldest instrument, a musical map to the afterlife, or perhaps something more unsettling, a sound not meant for human ears at all, but for whatever slumbers beneath the sand? The labyrinth guards its secrets closely, but one thing's certain: when the desert wind stills and those notes rise unbidden from the dark, it's hard to believe they're merely the sigh of stone. They feel like a call, and somewhere in the hidden chambers below, something may still be listening. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, where turquoise waters hide one of archaeology's most contested mysteries, the so-called Bimini Road stretches beneath the waves like a drowned causeway. These massive, rectangular limestone blocks, arranged in a near-perfect straight line, have sparked debates for decades. Are they remnants of a natural geological formation, or the sunken ruins of a lost civilization? But beyond the visual enigma lies something even stranger. Divers and researchers who have ventured down to these stones report an unsettling auditory phenomenon. When certain slabs are struck or even brushed by strong currents, they don't just clunk or scrape, they hum. A low, crystalline resonance pulses through the water, vibrating through dive gear and flesh alike, as if the stones are charged with some latent energy. Theories about this sonic peculiarity range from the scientific to the speculative. Geologists point to the block's unique composition, high-purity aragonite, a form of calcium carbonate that forms crystalline structures under specific conditions. When subjected to pressure or vibration, these crystals can generate piezoelectric effects, converting mechanical stress into electrical signals and sound. In laboratory settings, samples from Bimini have produced similar harmonic frequencies when agitated, supporting the idea that the hum might be a rare but natural acoustic phenomenon. Yet the consistency of the tones gives pause. Divers describe the sound as oddly uniform across different blocks, almost as if the stones were tuned to the same resonant frequency, a feat that would require deliberate shaping or selection. This is where the legend of Atlantis seeps in. Proponents of the lost city theory argue that the Bimini Road's alignment and acoustics mirror descriptions from Plato's dialogues, where the fabled metropolis was said to have buildings that sang when struck by ocean currents. Some even draw parallels to other ancient sites like Stonehenge or the Carnac stones, where resonant rocks were incorporated into sacred architecture. Could Bimini's humming slabs be fragments of an Atlantean energy grid, designed to harness terrestrial vibrations or cosmic frequencies? Metaphysical researchers have conducted experiments with hydrophones, claiming to detect infrasound pulses emanating from the site at regular intervals, though mainstream scientists dismiss these readings as interference from nearby shipping lanes or geological shifts. The most compelling and contentious evidence comes from a series of underwater recordings made in the late 1990s. A team of marine archaeologists captured what they described as a harmonic convergence during a full moon, when tidal forces allegedly caused multiple stones to vibrate in unison, creating a chord-like drone that lasted nearly 12 minutes. Skeptics attribute the event to coincidental wave action or equipment malfunction, but those present insist the sound was unmistakably rhythmic, even melodic. Local Bahamian folklore adds another layer. Fishermen have long spoken of the humming path, warning that those who follow the sound too far risk being led astray by old voices beneath the waves. Modern sonar scans reveal an even deeper puzzle. The blocks aren't just lying haphazardly. They're positioned atop a series of submerged arches and channels that funnel water in precise currents. When simulated in fluid dynamics models, these pathways show potential to amplify specific frequencies, suggesting the entire structure might function as a massive underwater sound chamber. If true, it would imply a level of hydroacoustic engineering unmatched by any known ancient culture. Yet for all the intrigue, the Bimini Road guards its secrets fiercely. Storms and tides have scattered some blocks, while sediment has buried others, making comprehensive study nearly impossible. The hum, when it manifests, remains unpredictable, sometimes triggered by the lightest touch, other times silent under the pound of hurricane waves. Whether natural wonder or artifact of a forgotten world, one thing's certain: when the ocean plays its submerged stones like some colossal instrument, the song it produces feels anything but accidental. It feels like a message, one we're still straining to hear. On the misty slopes of Korea's Ganghwa Island, where ancient dolmens squat like sleeping giants, the past doesn't just whisper, it groans. These colossal Neolithic tombs, some dating back over 4,000 years, are among the world's most enigmatic megalithic structures. But what truly unsettles visitors isn't just their size or age, it's the way they seem to protest when touched by time. During temperature shifts, particularly at dawn and dusk, the dolmen's massive capstone slabs weighing up to 300 tons emit deep, shuddering creaks, a sound like old bones settling into a reluctant stretch. The phenomenon stems from the dolmen's ingenious yet precarious construction. Unlike typical tombs where stones are mortared or wedged tightly, Korea's dolmens rely on gravity alone. The capstones balance delicately atop upright support stones, often with just a few points of contact. When the granite heats or cools, unevenly expanding under the midday sun or contracting during chilly nights, microscopic shifts occur between the slabs. These minute movements generate friction, translating into audible groans that resonate through the surrounding rock. Acoustic studies reveal the sounds aren't random. They cluster between 80 and 120 Hz, a range known to induce visceral unease in humans, often associated with distant thunder or large animal growls. Local folklore imbues these groans with darker meaning. Legends speak of the dolmens as giants' tables, where mythical beings imprisoned rebellious spirits beneath the stones. The creaking, villagers claimed, was the sound of those spirits struggling to break free. Some even swore the groans grew louder during lunar eclipses, interpreting the celestial event as a weakening of the giant's magic. Archaeologists have uncovered a chilling correlation. Dolmens with the most pronounced acoustic effects are often those marking mass graves or sites of ritual sacrifice. Modern researchers have pinpointed another layer to the mystery. The dolmen's support stones frequently feature shallow, cup-shaped depressions carved into their surfaces, not random erosion but deliberate sound cups. When replicated in lab settings, these depressions act like primitive amplifiers, concentrating vibrations from shifting capstones into directional waves. This suggests the groans weren't just incidental noise to the builders, but part of the tomb's sacred function. Imagine standing at a dolmen during a solstice ceremony, the stones groaning like awakening deities as temperature shifts heralded the turning of seasons. Yet for all the scientific explanations, one detail defies logic. Several dolmens continue groaning even when temperature and humidity remain constant, a phenomenon documented by seismic sensors. Geologists speculate that subterranean water flow or distant tectonic shifts might transfer energy through the bedrock, effectively playing the dolmens like instruments. But stand beside one of these tombs when it groans unprompted and theory feels inadequate. The sound doesn't just rise from the stones, it thrums through the ground itself, a voice from deep time that refuses to be silenced. Deep beneath the Andes Mountains, where jagged peaks cast long shadows over Peru's ancient Chichen Itza temple, lies a network of hidden channels that don't just carry water, they carry voices. Built over 2,000 years ago by a civilization obsessed with sonic manipulation, this sprawling complex was designed to disorient and awe. but its most chilling feature isn't what you see, it's what you hear. Step into the right corridor during a rainstorm, and the temple's drainage system transforms into something else entirely. A whispering gallery where running water morphs into ghostly speech, as if the walls themselves are answering your questions. Archaeologists studying the site have unraveled the secret behind this acoustic sorcery. The temple's builders carved narrow, winding channels beneath the floors and walls, routing rainwater through a series of precisely angled stone ducts. When water flows at a certain speed, especially during the heavy Andean rainy season, it creates vibrations that travel up through the architecture, resonating through hollow chambers and specially tuned niches. The result, a gurgling, murmuring echo that seems to form unintelligible words, rising from the ground like a chorus of drowned spirits. Modern sound engineers replicating the effect have confirmed the phenomenon isn't mere imagination. The channels act like primitive hydrophones, amplifying and distorting natural sounds into eerie vocal-like frequencies. What's truly unsettling is how intentional this design appears. The loudest voices emanate from beneath the Lanzon Gallery, a labyrinthine passage leading to the temple's central monolith, a towering granite idol with fanged jaws and serpentine hair. Priests conducting ceremonies here would have stood atop these sonic hotspots, their questions to the gods seemingly answered by the temple itself. Spanish chroniclers recorded indigenous accounts of the temple, speaking in many tongues, describing how petitioners would leave offerings in the channels to quench the thirst of the stones. Even today, caretakers report hearing the murmurs intensify during sudden downpours, the tones shifting as water levels rise and fall in the ancient ducts. Recent experiments reveal an even darker layer. When researchers pumped water through the channels at controlled rates, they discovered certain sections produce infrasound frequencies below human hearing known to induce dizziness or visions. This aligns eerily with descriptions of Chavin rituals where attendees reportedly entered trances, claiming to commune with deities. The temple's architecture may have been engineered to heighten these effects, with sound waves bouncing off concave relief carvings of jaguars and condors, creating the illusion of animal growls blending with the watery whispers. But the most haunting detail isn't the technology, it's the psychology. The temple's corridors twist and slope unpredictably, depriving visitors of visual reference points. In this disorienting space, the sudden emergence of voices from below would have felt unmistakably supernatural. Imagine walking those shadowed halls, your ears filling with what sounds like fragments of speech, half-heard words in no known language rising from the dark. It's no wonder that Chavin culture regarded this place as a literal portal to the spirit world, where water didn't just flow, it spoke and perhaps still does. On nights when the rain falls hardest, locals insist the temple's old stones don't just echo, they converse. The channels, dry for centuries in some places, suddenly thrum with phantom flows, their whispered secrets just beyond comprehension. Scientists attribute it to wind finding new paths through eroded masonry, but stand there alone with the Andes weeping overhead, and you'll understand why some truths refuse to stay buried. They rise instead in the voice of the water, a language older than memory, humming through the bones of the mountain. Across the endless golden dunes of the Sahara, where the silence feels as vast as the sky itself, something extraordinary happens when the wind rises. Certain slopes don't just shift and sigh, they roar. Known as singing sands, these rare dunes produce deep, resonant booms that can carry for miles, a sound like distant thunder or the drone of a low-flying aircraft. But what makes this phenomenon truly chilling isn't just the physics behind it, it's how these echoing deserts overlap with ancient Egyptian accounts of musical wastelands bordering their sacred sites, places where the very ground was said to chant prayers to the gods. Scientists studying the acoustic dunes have pinpointed the mechanics. When dry, uniformly sized grains of sand avalanche down steep slopes, they create synchronized vibrations. The grains bounce and collide in perfect harmony, generating seismic waves that amplify into those eerie booms. Only about 35 dunes worldwide exhibit this behavior, each with sand grains polished by centuries of wind into near-identical spheres, nature's own percussion instruments. But here's where history sends a shiver down the spine. The most consistent singing dunes cluster near Egypt's western frontier, just beyond the ruins of temples dedicated to Set, the god of chaos and storms. Ancient texts describe priests venturing into these deserts to hear the voice of the Red Land, returning with accounts of dunes that sang at the bidding of the wind god. A 19th-century explorer's journal adds another layer. While surveying near the Bahariya oasis, he documented a local guide demonstrating how to trigger the dunes' roar by sliding down their slopes, a technique modern researchers now use to study the effect. The guide claimed this knowledge had been passed down for generations, originating with desert nomads who once served as temple messengers. Even more intriguing, the dunes sing loudest during seasonal wind shifts that align with ancient Egyptian lunar festivals, particularly the Feast of the Valley, when the dead were believed to walk among the living. The most haunting connection lies in the sound itself. Spectral analysis reveals the booming dunes produce frequencies between 60 and 100 Hz, the same range as a male chant or a ceremonial drum. Archaeologists have found temple reliefs depicting priests holding peculiar concave instruments near depictions of desert caravans, leading some to speculate these might represent early attempts to harness the dunes' acoustics. At the ruined temple of Hibis, a mural shows a procession moving toward dunes under hieroglyphs reading, "The land that answers." Yet for all the scientific explanations, one mystery lingers. Recent expeditions to the Singing Sand Mountain near Siwa Oasis recorded something unsettling. The dunes occasionally produce distinct rhythmic patterns, sequences of 3 or 5 booms separated by precise intervals. Wind alone can't explain this cadence. Local Bedouin tribes whisper of old voices in the sand, while seismologists cautiously theorize about subsurface cavities acting as natural resonating chambers. But stand on those dunes at sunset, when the light turns the sand the color of dried blood and the first deep notes shake the ground beneath your feet, and you'll understand why the ancients believed these deserts weren't just singing. They were speaking in a language older than the pyramids, waiting for someone to decipher its meaning. High in the granite hills of Zimbabwe, where the ruined walls of Great Zimbabwe curve like the ribs of some ancient beast, there's a place where rain doesn't just fall, it performs. Nestled within the great enclosure's towering stone curves lies the so-called thunder chamber, a curved passageway where ordinary rainfall transforms into something primal. When storm clouds gather over the 12th century ruins, droplets striking the chamber's specially positioned soapstone slabs don't patter gently. They explode into deep, resonant booms, a rhythmic percussion that early explorers mistook for tribal war drums echoing through the valley. The secret lies in the chamber's meticulous geometry. Unlike ordinary ruins where water runs off randomly, the thunder chamber's walls funnel rainfall onto a series of concave stone dishes embedded in the floor. These aren't natural formations, they're precisely carved resonators, their interiors polished smooth as ceramic. When water hits their curved surfaces at just the right angle, the impact creates vibrations that travel upward through the chamber's narrowing walls, amplifying into thunderous echoes. Archaeoacoustic studies reveal the effect is no accident. The entire structure functions like a giant rain harp, with the ceiling's overhang acting as a soundboard to reflect and sustain each droplet's impact. What's truly astonishing is how the builders calibrated this phenomenon. The soapstone dishes vary slightly in size, each tuned to amplify different rainfall intensities. A light drizzle produces sparse, dramatic booms like a timpani roll, while a downpour triggers a continuous roar resembling an avalanche. 19th century accounts from European explorers describe hearing the thunder from miles away, convinced they'd stumbled upon some secret ceremony only to find the ruins empty, the stones themselves conjuring the ghostly performance. Modern meteorologists have even noted the chamber responds most powerfully to the seasonal rains that once signaled planting and harvest times, suggesting it may have served as an agricultural calendar in stone. But the chamber's acoustics reveal darker layers upon closer inspection. Certain spots along the walls contain niches where carved stone rods were found, tools that, when struck against the dishes, mimic the exact frequencies of the rain drums. Archaeologists suspect priests used these during dry seasons to simulate storms, perhaps invoking the ancestors or rain deities. The most unsettling discovery came in 2014, when sound engineers noticed the chamber's resonance peaks at 110 Hz, a frequency known to induce anxiety in laboratory settings. Stand in the center during a storm and the vibrations don't just reach your ears. They thrum through your ribcage, a visceral experience that could easily be interpreted as divine presence. Local Shona elders still speak of the chamber as the place where the sky walks, recounting legends of kings who held court here during storms, letting the stone's voices drown out all human arguments. Today, when the summer clouds gather and those first heavy drops strike the soapstone, it's impossible not to feel the weight of intention behind every carved surface. This wasn't just architecture, it was alchemy, turning water into sound, weather into ritual. The stones remember their purpose, and when the rains come, they don't just echo. They roar. At the heart of Mycenae's ancient citadel, where crumbling walls whisper of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, the massive lion gate stands guard with a secret carved into its very bones. This towering limestone entrance, crowned by its iconic twin lions, isn't just a relic of Bronze Age grandeur. It's a sonic time capsule. The gate's weathered facade hides an acoustic marvel, bronze plating that once sheathed its wooden doors, now long vanished, left behind a peculiar legacy. When struck or even brushed by strong winds, the gate's stone frame emits a lingering metallic hum, a ghostly resonance that seems to vibrate from some hidden dimension between history and myth. Archaeologists examining the gate's construction uncovered the source of this phenomenon. The doorjambs bear deep, parallel grooves, not decorative but functional channels designed to hold thick bronze sheets. These metal plates, secured with pins still visible in the stone, transformed the entire gate into a colossal sonic resonator. Unlike ordinary doors that simply open and close, Mycenae's entrance would have sung. Every time the massive doors swung on their hinges, the movement sent vibrations through the bronze, creating deep, gong-like tones that echoed across the citadel. Even light contact, a spear butt tapping the metal, or a gust of wind rattling the plates would produce harmonic overtones, turning mundane moments into ceremonial fanfares. What's truly astonishing is the precision behind this effect. The grooves aren't uniform, they vary in depth and spacing to create controlled vibration patterns. Modern engineers replicating the design found that the arrangement prevents discordant rattling, instead producing clear, sustained pitches. Analysis of the remaining bronze fragments revealed an alloy mix heavy in tin, a metal chosen not just for durability but for its acoustic properties. When struck, tin-rich bronze emits frequencies between 100 and 200 Hz, a range that carries exceptionally well through Mycenae's rocky terrain. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was calculated auditory theater designed to announce arrivals with undeniable authority. The psychological impact would have been profound. Imagine approaching the citadel as a foreign envoy or supplicant. Before guards or heralds could challenge you, the very architecture voiced its power, the gate's metallic growl reverberating through your chest. Homer's epics hint at this sonic intimidation, describing Mycenae's entrance as where the bronze speaks. Even more intriguing are clay tablets found on-site listing door musicians among palace staff, likely specialists trained to play the gates like instruments during rituals. One fragmentary text references a Song of the Lions, possibly a composition using the gate's resonant frequencies as a drone for chants or processions. Yet the gate's most haunting quality emerges in its ruined state. Though the bronze sheets are gone, the stone remembers. On windy nights, when air currents rush through the grooves with just the right pressure, the lintel still emits a faint, mournful hum. Archaeoacoustic surveys confirm the vibrations match the original bronze fundamental frequency, as if the stone absorbed the metal's voice over centuries of contact. Local shepherds have long spoken of the sleeping lion's breath, claiming the sound grows stronger during summer solstices when the setting sun heats the limestone's iron deposits. Scientists attribute this to thermal expansion, but stand there at dusk as the first cool breezes whisper through those ancient channels and rationality falters. The tone that rises isn't just vibration, it's memory, an echo of bronze-clad centuries-long dust of a civilization that understood power wasn't just seen but heard. In Mycenae's silent ruins, the gate remains the last musician, playing its one-note lament for anyone patient enough to listen. Scattered across Brittany's windswept moors, the menhirs of Carnac stand like frozen sentinels, but these aren't just silent monuments. Local legends whisper of stones that answer back. For centuries, farmers and shepherds reported an uncanny phenomenon. When certain tones were sung or played near specific menhirs, the stones would respond with resonant hums, vibrating as if tapped by an invisible hand. This wasn't random superstition. Modern researchers have confirmed that many of these megaliths possess acoustic properties so precise, they function like natural tuning forks, attuned to frequencies the ancients might have known by heart. The secret lies in the menhir's unique geology. Unlike ordinary fieldstones, Brittany's standing stones are rich in quartz and granite, minerals that vibrate at consistent frequencies when stressed. Strike one with a mallet, and the sound lingers far longer than physics should allow, sometimes for over 10 seconds, but the real magic happens with voice. Breton folklore describes rituals where druids would chant at specific pitches, causing nearby stones to wake and amplify the tones. In 2012, a team from the University of Rennes tested this claim using audio equipment. They discovered that menhirs positioned along ley lines, particularly those near burial mounds, resonate most powerfully between 100 and 130 Hz, a range that overlaps with the lower register of the human voice. When a singer matched these frequencies, the stones didn't just echo, they sympathetically vibrated, producing secondary harmonics that made the sound seem to come from the earth itself. What's eerie is how intentional this alignment appears. The responding menhirs aren't randomly placed, they cluster in geometric patterns, often framing dolmens or spring sites. Archaeoacoustic surveys reveal that these singing stones share nearly identical dimensions and mineral densities, suggesting they were quarried and selected for their sonic properties. Even more unsettling, the resonant frequencies match those used in traditional Breton mourning chants, a cultural memory perhaps preserved in sound long after the original purpose faded. But the mystery deepens after sunset. Locals insist the stones respond more readily during lunar phases, particularly the waning moon. Scientists initially dismissed this as folklore, until nighttime experiments with infrasound detectors revealed subtle shifts in the menhir's resonant frequencies under changing gravitational forces. It's as if the stones remember their role in moonlit ceremonies, reactivating when the conditions align. Perhaps the most haunting detail comes from a 19th century ethnographer's journal. He documented an elder demonstrating how to call the stones, not with song but with a series of clicks made by striking two quartz pebbles together. When replicated today, the technique works eerily well. The clicks bounce between menhirs, creating a staccato dialogue that feels less like geology and more like conversation. Whether ancient signaling system or sacred technology, one thing's clear. In Brittany, the stones don't just stand, they listen, and sometimes, if the pitch is just right, they answer. At dawn, when the mist clings to Borobudur's towering stupas like cobwebs, visitors climbing the ancient stone steps sometimes freeze mid-step, not at the sight of the sunrise but at the sound. A low, rhythmic chanting seems to rise from the temple's very foundations, a chorus of voices so faint it could be wind rustling through the carved reliefs, except the tones are too precise, too melodic, too human. This isn't random noise, it's a ghostly replication of the Buddhist sutras once recited here by hundreds of monks, a sonic echo lingering centuries after the last prayer faded. The phenomenon occurs most often in the temple's upper terraces, where 72 perforated stupas encircle the central dome like stone lace. When the morning wind sweeps across these bell-shaped structures at just the right angle, air spirals through their latticework, splitting into vortices that collide and merge. The result, a resonant hum that fluctuates between 50 and 130 Hz, the exact frequency range of male chanting voices. Archaeoacoustic studies confirm these stupas weren't merely decorative. Their patterns create Helmholtz resonance, the same physics that gives voice to beer bottles when you blow across their mouth. But at Borobudur, the effect is orchestrated on a monumental scale, with each stupa tuned to a slightly different pitch. Together, they form a chordal drone eerily reminiscent of Tibetan throat singing. What chills researchers isn't just the precision, it's the timing. The chanting effect peaks during the 2 annual equinoxes, when sunlight aligns with the temple's staircases, illuminating carved scenes of enlightenment in sequence. Local legends claim this is when the stone monks awake, their voices rising to greet the cosmic alignment. Modern recordings reveal something even stranger. During these events, the wind-carved chant occasionally shifts pitch in ways that mirror the cadence of the Heart Sutra, a core Mahayana Buddhist text. Coincidence, perhaps, but the temple's architects left clues. Hidden niches near the stupas contain small bronze plaques depicting musicians with wind instruments, their mouths positioned as if blowing toward the perforations. Then there's the unsettling way sound interacts with Borobudur's relief panels. The lower terraces depict scenes from the life of Buddha, their carved figures frozen in devotion. When the wind-borne chanting drifts downward, certain panels, particularly those showing monks in prayer, act like acoustic lenses, focusing the sound into intelligible syllables. In 2018, a team from Gajah Mada University identified 3 spots where the chant resolves into tones matching the Pali words for awaken and see clearly. The most haunting of these points lines up with a relief of the Buddha touching the earth at his moment of enlightenment, as if the very stone bears witness to that ancient revelation. But Borobudur's deepest acoustic secret lies buried. Beneath the temple's foundations, radar scans have revealed a network of narrow, winding channels, too small for human passage but perfectly sized to funnel wind currents. When air rushes through these tunnels during seasonal storms, it doesn't just hum. It produces distinct harmonic intervals, perfect fourths and fifths, the building blocks of sacred music across cultures. Indonesian folklore speaks of the temple's Naga pipes, claiming the serpentine waterways were carved to mimic the mythical Naga's whisper. Stand there at daybreak when the first golden light filters through the stupas and that impossible chorus swells from the stones, and you'll understand why pilgrims still kneel weeping on these terraces. The wind may be the instrument, but the song feels older than the temple itself, as if Borobudur wasn't built to house sacred sound, but to remember it, to keep chanting long after the last monk turned to dust, whispering wisdom into the ears of those who still climb toward the light. From the echoing chambers of Malta's Hypogeum to the wind-whipped pyramids of Tikal, these 30 acoustic mysteries reveal something extraordinary. Ancient civilizations didn't just build structures. They composed them. Every hum, groan, and phantom chant tells the same story. Our ancestors didn't stumble upon these sonic phenomena by accident. They engineered them with precision, turning stone into instruments and wind into choirs. Whether using quartz-rich rocks as natural amplifiers, carving ventilation shafts to mimic animal cries, or aligning entire temples to celestial sound triggers. These cultures wielded acoustics with a sophistication we're only beginning to measure. What's truly staggering is how these sounds transcend time. The same frequencies that once sent priests into sacred trances still unsettle modern visitors. The harmonies crafted for forgotten deities continue to resonate with anyone who listens. These aren't just artifacts, they're conversations, ones that began millennia ago and haven't stopped. They challenge our assumptions about ancient technology, blurring the line between architecture and artistry, physics and spirituality. Now we turn to you. Have you ever stood in an ancient place and heard something inexplicable? A whisper in a deserted corridor, a melody from a crumbling wall, or a vibration that defies logic? Share your stories in the comments, because every account adds another piece to this acoustic puzzle. And stay tuned, we're just scratching the surface. From the infrasound labyrinths of Cambodia to the submerged singing stones of Japan's Yonaguni ruins, our next investigation will delve even deeper into history's most haunting soundscapes. Until then, remember, the past isn't silent, it's waiting to be heard. All we have to do